Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, coming to you live from Revive's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Kimon Angelides to the Reboot Chronicles. He's the Executive Chairman and CEO of Femtech Health, a data-driven personalized health and beauty and wellness brand for women. They have something like 10 million members that are part of this platform, and a female-led executive team, which is really cool, on their way to maybe over 200 people, employees, with private equity investors from all around the world and companies like Walgreens, Unilever, and Shiseido. Kimon was named Disruptive Founder of the Year by Rock Health and Goldman Sachs, and he was also the founder of many other companies, as some of you know, including one of my favorites in Chicago, Livongo, which was acquired by TelaDoc just a year after its multi-billion-dollar IPO. So not too many of you can say that. Good to see you, Kimon. By the way, what's your nickname? I've heard it's Kim. Is that cool?
Yeah, just call me Kim. Thanks, Dean. I really appreciate that. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Makes it so much easier. Thanks. Okay, so this is your seventh startup by my count, I think, if you're counting them all. So what's up? Why Femtech?
Yeah, it is the number 7. Well, that's right. Yeah, it's my 7th at 71. I saw the sort of the inequities that I thought in women's health. That was kind of number 1. And sort of number 2, I saw that, the VC market got really interested in women's health.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what they did is they broke it up. They fragmented it. They started investing in little solutions, and certainly like fertility and menopause and pregnancy. And so, I said, where would a woman get actually, care in one place? Where would be a single destination? And so that was really the challenge, and that's why we got interested in it, the inequities and really sort of the fragmentation that existed, and the sort of the lack of coordination. And so it's been a great area to be in. So that's why we got into it.
I love that. Many founders don't nail it down to 3 sentences like that. Just like this is why I'm doing it. That why always, I don't know. Sometimes it's just missing. So I love what you're building. Tell us about. I'm a big platform approach guy, so I kind of, as soon as I saw your website months ago, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be good. You're doing things from online, obviously, engagement, communities, devices, telehealth, shopping. It's a lot of stuff, by the way. Yeah, just kind of take us on a little tour. What's going on?
Well, what we really wanted to do. So first of all, we wanted to build a platform that really was end to end. Number 2, we really didn't want to build something that really just spoke to the reproductive machinery. And I'm going to tell you, that's what most of these little companies are. They're centered on the reproductive machinery of a woman. And so we thought that would be broader than that, for example, not only in the health space, but, even in terms of financial stuff. And so, and then the third, we didn't really want to build it around age, right? We didn't want to say, oh, well, it's 40 plus and women are going to menopause. What we really wanted to do is build it with respect to journeys, so that woman could go between lots of different journeys, if you will. We have urinary and vaginal health, we have reproductive, we have sexual wellness, and they could combine these. So for example, hormone balance might be accompanied by services that for sexual wellness. So that was kind of number 1. Build it, around journeys, real life things where women could build an ecosystem of products and services that actually spoke to that journey, that particular stage or state of their life that they were in, rather than saying, oh, okay, well, you're 40 or 50, you need to have this stuff. So that's why we built it. We built a platform that would be end to end, built on journeys, and that we could create both an ecosystem of products that spoke to a woman at that particular stage and services that supported her.
I like that. For those of you out there that are running companies like this, we need this in every industry. I'm holding up my phone as you were there on the video. It's like we wouldn't have so many apps on our phone if people took more of this holistic approach, this ethnography that says, what do men need? What do women need? What do people need in this country, this age bracket? So So I love that you're really, you're not just zeroing in, you're kind of zooming out, but you also have like, I don't know how best to say this. You got so much breadth and depth. How do you, and you're really rebooting a category because there's been many women's, let's just call them websites since the 90s when we started launching, these targeted websites, but they're typically a bunch of affiliation partners and things. And so where do you think is going to be your biggest strength is bringing the community before we get into business models and the boring stuff, but is it really like bringing that community together first? It's like, the chicken and the egg argument, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's a great question, but let me tell you what
I
the
try.
thought process, and most of the people thought that we were kind of nuts doing this. The industry that really knows women the best, in my opinion, and I'm not just speaking from my Y chromosome here, it's really the beauty industry.
Yes,
It's an industry that really does know how to speak to women, to
exactly.
deal with women, and to actually have those transactions. And so that was kind of number one in terms of the kind of communities that we really wanted to be able to serve. But we wanted to go beyond beauty. Beauty, as I've learned, is almost just a purely transactional type of business. They buy products and there's just sort of no engagement afterward. There's a identification of the brand. So we first said is that, look, beauty is a great place to have communities of engaged women, right? That are really engaged in self-care, and the perception of themselves, for example. That's why they use beauty products. But why not extend that sort of transaction to something which is really going to be self-care into sort of healthcare? So
Hmm.
that was kind of number one. And really number two is that we really believe that beauty is really part of the whole continuum of care, of really of healthcare. And so that's really where we started. It was beauty. They said, well, the healthcare guy said, why beauty, right? Why beauty? And I said, well, that's the community really where they understand. And that's a community that you can actually start to expand and start to introduce things that, start speaking
Right.
about.
You- You've hit on two fascinating things there. One is the healthcare industry should have been the ones that understood men and women the best, and they don't. I think is what you said. The second thing is, as I introduced you, I made up your profile myself. I called your company Health, Beauty, and Wellness because what we found over the last few years, especially during lockdowns, is it all came together. Health, beauty, and wellness has come together, and women and men are more concerned about what they're putting in their body versus on their body versus proactive, reactive. It is amazing what's happened, and it seems like you've seized on that opportunity as well.
Well, I certainly hope we have, but there's really there's something that goes a little bit beyond that, which is I also
Yeah.
think is incredibly exciting. And this is it. Um, there's this movement in the beauty industry of clean products, but clean is just chemical stuff. We need to start thinking about products that actually match the biology of a woman and that are good and effective, right? So, for example, how we can marry both healthcare and beauty is that during certain states, menopause, it's known that the skin changes, for example,
Hmm.
and there's certain lotions and certain products that actually match that state. Same thing, with various other hormonal balances. And so, I think it's incumbent on us to be able to extend what we think in the beauty products to make them personalized, but actually effective,
Right.
not just selling stuff, effective on a clinical basis. That women, if they spend their money, they should get something that actually works instead of having to see if it works.
Exactly. I love that you're focusing on personalization. It's Revive is obviously the sponsor of the program, and it's all about personalizing the journey. So if you walk into a retailer or a big brand store, rather than looking at 15 products, it's like here's the four that are specific for you, your
Totally.
type, your body type. You're taking that to the next level. I mean, there's two types of personalization. That's more front end and develop a relationship. But there's also some companies coming at it where it's like, let's make custom formulas.
Yep.
What do you think of that?
Um, well, actually, in our particular case, we've been working on that. I believe it's doable. I think it's bespoke. I think we can make them, and
Yep.
I think we can make it on the basis of biology. So we're working pretty hard on that, and I'm extremely excited about that. where you make custom and actually individualized formulas for somebody that
Yeah, and I
matches
liked
the
it.
biology.
Right. And you've got the biology. I mean, you're a science company, so you can get the biome stuff, you can get everything, bring it together. I recommend all types of products, not just beauty, everything from supplements to vitamins to beauty to real hardcore medical things that I think are misdiagnosed. What I've seen in some of those companies, they're small, they're around the world, but scaling one-to-one bespoke stuff, it's been tough for the big brands to figure that out. So it still seems like a small kind of group of companies that are doing that well.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Dean. I mean, I believe, and I think I think we've been looking at it pretty seriously, and have done some things that I think there is a scalable formula there.
Yes. Yep.
You can do it on the front end by personalizing it based upon, AI or some machine learning type stuff in terms of trying to do suggestions and skin types and devices and things like that. I think there's other ways to do it though too. It does require data, where, irrespective of it, requires data. So the inputs, you have to be data rich inputs. And then I think you go from there. I think it's doable. In fact, I know it's doable. So
And you're heavy, besides scientific, you're heavy duty data company too. You kind of started with that. You mentioned you got like 44 million women's records. I think it was primarily medical claims data. How has that helped guide you? And I mean, I think it guided you to launch this company. It feels like, but what kinds of things are you seeing there?
yeah, that's been
I
fantastic.
often answer my own question. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. It's a fantastic question, and it's unbelievable. You don't really know what you can find if you don't start looking.
Mm,
And the objective of that is to ask questions. What can you find in even medical claims about the journey that would give you an indication of where someone might be hitting a wall? In other words, can we actually identify predictors of conditions like early osteoporosis, let's say endometriosis? And then if we can do that in the data, and we actually have been able to do that, is to ask the question then, how do you alter the trajectory so that that individual doesn't get to that particular state? What sort of products and what sort of services can you actually offer to alter that trajectory? And that's been incredibly exciting to be able to take data sets and find out with some degree of 95 to 98% confidence that you can actually provide products in an early intervention.
no,
That's
smart.
a big deal.
Huge step. I teach some Kellogg students, that ones that are actually starting companies, like you need to move from like analytical data analytics and stuff that's just you're looking at the past. You need to move to prescriptive, and then you need to move to actually descriptive, which is what are we going to do about it? We're going to do this data, and how can you not just make your company better, but launch new industries? And if you look in the travel industry, for instance, the company they start out where it's just like you could shop, then you could compare. Now it's companies like Hopper that'll tell you exactly what day should I buy this ticket, when will it be the lowest
Exactly.
price. And
Exactly.
I kind of see that where you are going too. It's like, no, there's so much more we can do with this data. And now you're going to start getting all your own data. You've been looking at historical. You're going to get live. Well, you're already getting it, I guess. You're not a startup anymore. I mean, people call you a startup, but you're pretty far along.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a startup anymore, by the way.
You know,
it, it's
some
it,
mornings, it depends how mornings go. Some mornings it probably does.
well, we have processes now.
Oh boy, let's
and,
just
and
uh,
as
time
an
to start
entrepreneur,
another company.
yeah, as an entrepreneur, by the way, that's not exactly where I excel, by the way,
I know.
is
Yeah.
our processes and protocols.
Well, so you bring up a good thing. We're all about growth on Reboot here. So I love what you've been doing on the what I call BBB, build, buy, borrow model. Borrow being partnering. So you've acquired some couple companies quite smartly, by the way. I think you picked them up at the right time. It looks like you've got a few more in the hopper, but you're also really smart about partnering. So I was just wondering if you'd tell us about this build, buy, borrow matrix and how you're thinking about, okay, here's where I want to be in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, well, thanks. Actually, I should say I've surrounded myself with a really extraordinary people as well. But
Mm.
So when we first set out, I said, look, I did look at a lot of companies and say, how could we start with some of these companies? Could we buy? But after a while, as an entrepreneur, we said, we're going to build the platform. We're not afraid to actually build, okay, anything. And I've always built in my career as well. And so we built the platform, not knowing whether we were going to buy or anything like that. But I think the very first strategy was I didn't want to have to knock on a lot of doors and raise a lot of cash to be able to sell either direct to consumer. And so our first acquisitions were trying to be able to get communities of engaged women such that we could learn from them, and also, change some of the product mix that they had. So that's not something we could really build. That's something that we had to buy.
Yeah,
Um,
Birchbox was a smart move.
yeah, Birchbox was a good one. It was struggling in some cases. We've really righted it. We've used our healthcare techniques to be able to change the CAC
Mhm.
from where it was 60 now to less than 20. So it makes actually a D2C business actually pretty viable.
Critical.
We have
Yeah.
large communities and we're changing the products and the product mix. And there's some really cool things that are coming in the next 5 to 6 months. So, that was a strategy that we said we needed to buy that. And then we bought a couple of AI, and then the Liquid Grids community that provided us another, couple of million people so that we could actually understand on business intelligence what types of products. So those were buys on top of the platform that we built. But we built a lot of stuff. We built some devices. We built diagnostics. We built, a variety of different things, all the analytics. But now we're actually going into a mode of taking a look at a couple of companies that most healthcare companies probably wouldn't have thought about
No,
getting into the healthcare space.
not in their wheelhouse. That's
Yeah.
the-
So anyway, so we're just in the midst of completing 3 of them right now, which has been really cool to fill in some of the gaps.
yeah. And you've got gaps to fill on your platform. And then as you start looking at channel partners, I guess
Yeah.
we should, we're not getting too geeky here, but on your B2B side, you're going through companies and insurers and that whole network who's, I think now going into 2023, more used to doing deals with companies like you, taking care of their employees. It didn't used to be a priority. I didn't see it 5 or so years ago. And
Yeah.
you saw it with Livongo. So that timing looks good. So that's more like a demand gen. And then on the market side, there's so many different types of I'll just call them different types of providers and services and products that you can plug your audiences into. I mean, some of them sounds like you're going to own, and others,
Yeah.
you don't need to control them. You just need to have the right offers for the right people at the right time. Is that the idea?
Yeah, my dream is actually, I've got a dream with respect to what healthcare has been. And again, I think this is a wonderful area to do it. I mean, healthcare, if you go to a B2B customer, or some employer or a health plan, um, actually, it's more so now that they need to actually have good, robust health plans to retain their workers, especially women. And I think
Exactly.
that's become a little bit more a higher priority. But I have this dream that we really won't separate what you would call self-care products and beauty products from really the healthcare experience. Right now, we're really focused on sort of what I would call sick care and chronic care. Let's fix something that's wrong. There's some prevention in there too, but think of the day when, to me, this is a dream. Most health insurance companies are generally hated by the employees. They
Yeah.
don't regard them very much. But think of the day where a payer, a health insurance company would actually provide self-care products,
Mhm.
even for women, for beauty products, things that actually you put on your body, part of the whole daily routine of taking care of yourself and your body. That's my dream, is that things that we typically think are consumer products become part of that healthcare experience that employers as well as health plans actually recognize. Just like testing strips for diabetes when we saw in Livongo, just like, for example, menstrual products, those aren't covered. For example, why shouldn't they be covered? I don't get it. I don't see why they shouldn't be covered. Um, because it's just part of the physiology. They should definitely be covered for women. It shouldn't necessarily always reside on the consumer side, out of pocket.
Yeah, the industry seems to be a little bit.
Yeah, on the B2B side, I have this dream where I think that sort of products that we normally consider self-care products, would be part of really that, healthcare journey. That we've been focused too long on what is chronic care,
Right.
and products for clinical stuff that address chronic care. But I think, things like menstrual products are really part of the whole sort of physiology and the whole spectrum essentially, and really should be covered as part of that sort of healthcare as well. They're not entirely consumer. It's just part of that whole physiology. And so
Yeah.
that's a dream that I'd like to make it, it's a whole continuum of healthcare, and that includes some what we think are consumer products today.
It seems like the industry is still stuck a little bit in past, let's just call it models and checklists and things. Do you think someone like a CVS is poised to kind of lead the way there, being both health and retail, or
Yeah, that's
seems,
an interesting question. You know what
seems
they're
like
what
it? And the stores are all turning into clinics. Walgreens is
Well,
another.
but it's kind of the reverse actually, Dean. I think it's kind of the reverse. They
Ah,
they they were consumer, I think. Right now they're trying to turn into clinics. So they're trying to get into, sort of what you would call the acute and chronic care. I can see that sort of continuum, but it's it's an interesting sort of transition. I in terms of trying to pick up some of the clinical stuff in their clinic. I think they think it's mostly because of foot traffic,
exactly. Right.
foot
Doesn't.
traffic in the clinic. So,
Yeah.
but it's a good approach, I think, if it
And
can
then
be pulled off by a big company.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure you can help them. So let's switch to that, what, the B2B side, but let's call it direct to consumer, DTC. As a percent of revenue a couple years from now, you're going to be half and half. Where do you think this company is going to be? It just seems to me like these partnerships, the cost of customer acquisition is so much better when you're partnering up with the employers. They end up paying for most of this anyway.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Actually, the cost of acquisition on an employer side is obviously lower. I've seen companies, and including Birchbox, that spend so much of their dollars. I mean, it's just unheard of in the healthcare. So much of their dollars on advertising. So the revenue is directly tied to the dollars that they're spending. I've never seen that in healthcare. So we dialed it back in the Birchbox and other thing. We dialed it back and got it to a reasonable place, essentially, through the messaging. So um, I still think that there's a huge channel for sort of healthcare on the direct to consumer, provided it's followed up with real stuff. So, for example, there's proliferation of test yourself, right? Well, that's
Everywhere.
that's
Yep.
cool, right? That's cool, but I mean, okay, you can test yourself, but
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
does it mean? I mean, what does it mean? What are you going to do? What sort of actionable data are you going to get? So I think there's a thirst for people to do consumer purchasing of healthcare, but it really has got to be followed up on something that's meaningful to them. And right now, I mean, a report, a lab report, or a genetic report, and things like that doesn't really kind of ring the bells in terms of helping them. What are they going to do next? So I still think there's a big D2C play if
Right.
if scientists and the companies actually could educate people, and they're just not educating them appropriately, in
Well,
my
you've got
opinion.
right, and you've got experience in telehealth. That's where I thought you were going. So, are you going to be offering that directly, or is that like a
Do.
partner thing?
Yeah, we do right now, and everybody has to have telehealth now. It's become kind of just a commodity,
Yeah, thank you,
and so
COVID. Probably the only nice benefit you got out of that.
yeah, well, yeah,
Totally spiked the demand.
yeah. I mean, I was involved in this years ago, as early as 2004, and to get reimbursed from telehealth was really an incredible chore. You had to be in a rural area; no one believed it.
And now
So
they're begging you. Now they're begging you to do it.
yeah, it accelerated the adoption of it. So I think it's a big difference actually now. So
So you've got a whole nother side of your business. I mean, you're a doctor, for gosh sakes. You don't just play one on TV. You've got a lot of things going on with, diagnostics and recommendations, but your back office, you're actually doing, medical trials and testing, and you're developing some of your own. You're not just a platform that's plugging all this together, which for me might be enough. you actually have proprietary things going on. Anything you can talk about?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, the products. I mean, we have some questions we want to address.
Mm.
Here are a couple of them, not necessarily specifics, but we tend right now in the healthcare market to immediately go to medications, and so I think a great question would be: is it okay for women if they have a UTI or bacterial vaginosis, which is a pretty common cause? The simplest, route is to either, if they have to go to the ER, they go see the, physician, and then they get a script written and they take antibiotics. There are other ways to do this for recurrent UTI. So we have some clinical trials right now that are asking the question: can we use sort of living medicines, probiotics, and the like,
Hmm.
to be able to restore the vaginal sort of microbiome, the ecosystem, so it takes hold. In other words, bacterial vaginosis is really a disruption of the bacteria in the vaginal area. And if you can restore sort of that natural ecosystem with probiotics, which are bacteria,
Hmm.
then you don't have to resort to antibiotics. And so those are some of the things that we're doing right now, and asking the question: can you use these methods to be able to restore and get restore that ecosystem so that that condition doesn't happen.
That's pretty cutting edge stuff. And when you see just in terms of, your platform, you said you're doing some acquisitions, doing some partnerships to fill in the gap. Seems like you're really smart at knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at. And when you back up and look at the beauty part of it, there's health, beauty, and wellness, but then there's what's your vision on the beauty side?
Well, yeah, it's hard not to get carried away, to be honest with you. It's an incredible eye opener, and it's an incredible area in the beauty area.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
I'm
margin. There's a lot of margin in it. That's why I
Well,
asked.
it's not only the business side.
Yeah.
It's the ability to be creative in a market, I think, And
Uh,
there's some companies out there that I've seen. I just love their narrative. And what I mean by narrative, I don't
mm,
mean clean beauty. I mean, sourcing old, medicinal products, by the way, that had therapeutic value that you can put on your skin, that have been used for a long time, and putting them in formulations that are therapeutic. I
yeah,
think
they were all forgotten about. You're right. The
it's
big.
beautiful stuff. It's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful stuff. And I don't know the area that well, and how it, but putting all these sort of chemicals, or trying to recreate, it's the silliest thing I've ever thought about, is that, to recreate all that chemistry and then to have these products when they exist in nature and they've been known for a long time. I think it's beautiful science. Using natural products that have medicinal value. Oh, I love it. So I think there's a big movement. I think there's a movement. I won't say it's a big movement, but I think there's a nice movement to sort of change the narrative. I don't think it's there yet, actually, Dean. I've seen clean, but now I think, and I'd love to be a part of this movement, is to
Right.
be able to start using products which we've known for years and centuries, that now we've done clinical stuff, to put in products that are beauty products that really are therapeutic and medicinal and actually work.
Yeah.
And to
What?
me, that's an exciting area on the beauty side. And the second thing is the personalization. If you know what someone needs on the biology, or you can use imaging techniques,
Hmm.
then you can take all of this sort of pharmacopoeia, right, and then
Right.
apply it in a beautiful way.
I like that. Yeah. Especially the way you kind of present it and bring it to women and men who can then make decisions, because that tends to be the
Totally,
overwhelming part. It's
totally.
like, might even have to do it. A lot of these brands are starting to have aided and unaided consultations, both online and in store. But it really scales best when it's unaided, because you can do millions of people and give them the right tools, but make it simple
Yeah,
and get them into the right regiment and stuff to take care of themselves. So
yeah.
yeah, I
There's
like I like your vision there. And there's a lot of clean and green washing still going on out there, but there's a handful of brands that are so pure. They have lists that they will never use. But that's different from what you said, which is no, we need to build more holistic products that already are in the earth.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's amazing, the flora that we have on the earth, and it's there for reasons. For example, And they have all these, they've evolved. I mean, plants evolve, right?
Oh,
And they evolve.
didn't
They
think of that.
evolve in terms of the ecosystem, in terms of who eats them, how they eat them, how they've grown, how they pollinate. They're, and they're making all these incredible, compounds that that we've ignored. And so I think there's a great thing in terms of natural products. I think that's the next wave, and the personalization.
I like it. Kim, we really want to thank you for joining us. You've got a lot of corporate listeners, but also a lot of entrepreneurs. Any, you're 7-time entrepreneur. Any parting advice for people that are in the midst of a startup right now?
Um,
It's a whole
in,
nother hour. I know.
no, yeah, well, thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, embrace chaos. You
I
can't
like it.
control it. And sometimes when you're able to channel that energy, by the way, look, a startup is chaotic. And some people who start think that it's going to be organized and you're going to have all the ends tied and stuff like that. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. If you
And
want,
if you're an entrepreneur, really, there's so many exciting things. You've got to pare it down, but it is chaotic. And eventually that chaos becomes organized. So it's actually cool, because then you see it as product. So it's kind of fun in that respect.
I love it. Thriving on chaos. Thanks for joining us. You've been listening to Kimon Angelides, who is the CEO and chairman of Femtech. Really cool company. Check it out. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. We want to thank you for joining us from around the globe today, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.